All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. We're going to be talking to another artist today. My name is Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
Okay, I'm Michael Tanner. I'm one of the writers on Orcs Space. Orcs Space is a sci-fi, fantasy, comedy comic book about three idiot orcs who steal the most advanced spaceship in the galaxy and go out on wild adventures.
And hey, I'm François Vigneault. I'm the artist on the aforementioned title, Orcs in Space. And just like Michael said, it's a lot of fun adventures in space, and we try and add as much comedy flavor, adventure flavor, action as we can in each page, each panel, and each book.
Yeah, I mean, the book is just a ton of fun. As soon as you open up, the colors just splash out, and it is just pure comic book enjoyment. So yeah, kudos to you guys. One question I had is this your first time working together on a project? And then how did that process work as far as a writer and an artist collaborating together?
Yeah, this is our first project. This was a very interesting project the way it came together because there are 4 credited writers on the book, and Francois should really get also a writer's credit. It's probably too late to change any of that now, but Francois also deserves some credit there. So basically, to give kind of origin, 2 brothers, Abed and Rashad. They came up with the concept. They love the idea of putting like orcs, like fantasy orcs in a sci-fi setting. But they had never written a comic book before. And they are friends going back to their youth with Justin Roiland, the co-creator of Rick and Morty. So they went to Justin and were like, hey, we have this cool idea. We want to do something with it. Can you help? And he's like, I can help. Let's kind of like massage some of it. Let's see what we can do. I'm doing the Rick and Morty comic with Oni Press. Let's see if they're interested. Oni Press was interested, but they're like, these guys have never written a comic book before. Who do we have who needs work? Enter me. Because they lived in LA, I lived in LA, so it would be easy. This was way back 2018, maybe even 2017 when this first started rolling, so we could do kind of in-person meetings. And so we kind of developed and we came up with the arcs. And then I'm going to let Francois tell how he got involved.
Yeah, sure. So as Michael said, the writers had been like working together for a while, and they had like kind of a writer's room going. They were developing the stories, the arcs, and all the characters and everything. And then I think that basically it was go time. Oni was like, okay, we've been percolating with this for a little while, but now we're going to publish it, and it's going to come out next July. And so we need an artist. And I had just finished a book with them called Titan, which is totally worlds away, a science fiction also, but just in a totally different kind of universe, very serious, socio-political kind of thing. But they were like, well, can you draw a funny comic? And I was like, yeah, sure, I can draw a funny comic. And so we did some drawing tests and things like that. And, obviously, like, we wanted the vibe to fit with the guy's script. And so, so there's a little bit of Justin Roiland in there, a little bit of like influences from stuff that I was reading when I was a kid that are appropriate, I think, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Usagi Yojimbo, things like that. And then so I designed the characters, started off to the races drawing the comic, and that was right when the pandemic started hitting. So everything got delayed a little bit. The first arc got pushed off a little bit, and also we didn't get to do all kinds of like those fun conventions and things like that. So me and Michael have been doing a lot of podcasts all around the interwebs, all over the place. And then I want to give a shout out too. You mentioned the colors, and so I just want to mention the colorist is DJ Chavis, and he works with a guy who is Dave, and they work together, and they're the ones bringing that wonderful bright palette to everything.
Those sugary sweet colors that just pop.
Yes.
You'll get a cavity. Those colors are so sweet.
Absolutely. So, Orcs in Space. Why? I guess, plainly put, why orcs? Like, what drove you that direction?
I think the idea is orcs have a very long history and complicated and sometimes problematic history in fantasy, going back all the way to Tolkien. Where they are very much like they are a insert for whatever the current evil is. Whether it's the Germans, if we're talking like World War II, or just like and it goes back to kind of pulling stuff like they use a lot of like Mongol energy, so it's a lot of like foreign invader. So history of orcs is very complicated, and there's been a real trend in the last few years, especially, to kind of try to rehabilitate that concept. Like the concept in fantasy of like evil races is weird, and like again going back to like Tolkien, who like templated everything, and everyone else is just standing on his shoulders awkwardly. So to like take the idea of orcs and keep a lot of the silliest tropes about them, like that they're like barbarians and like kind of dumb, and really like hone it down to a fine point, and then saying, what if they're just the Three Stooges, and going from there, and then saying like, all right, what if we take the Three Stooges and we put them in the Star Trek universe? But they just happen to be green and like clubs and skulls and don't know how to behave in polite society. So just the Three Stooges, and kind of go from there. I think that's a huge part of the DNA of the book, is just wanting to say like, all right, let's take. I mean, you can do like in the first issue, we also kind of set up the opposite trope of taking our Star Trek analog characters, the StarBleeps, and stranding two of them on the orc homeworld. There could easily have been a book about that. You take two like kind of like prim and proper space explorers in like the Picard genre and put them on a fantasy monster world and see how they do. So it like the concept of just fish out of water just works either way you do it.
Definitely. I do too. It is
I love
great. It is a great book. So much I mean, there's so much going on in that book, just the backgrounds and some of the, I think some of you tied in different things, maybe historically, like you're talking about the Turtles and, some of the TV shows, from the 80s and 90s. And almost like you said, I figured orcs, I didn't know if someone was a huge Tolkien fan or a Dungeons and Dragons fan. It's just interesting to see how you kind of, take all those historical pieces and kind of put those little nuggets in the book. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. Rashad Gheith, one of the originators, like his kind of origin story with it is he was playing, was it Ultima Online? He was playing
I think that's right.
Yeah, an MMO. And he just started playing as an orc character, and he fell in with the online orc community, and he thought it was just like the most loving and accepting and fun like role play community, because they were like a bunch of mages are all gonna be like, we are mages casting fireball, where the orcs gonna be like, oh, we smashed the dragon. Like it's like there's more like visceral fun in the orc world,
right?
And kind of wanting to kind of take that as far as he could. So much where like Rashad writing credit is his online orc character named Velgamog.
I saw that.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's cool. Nice. Well, but let me jump in, Paul, before you ask your question. I just want to kind of tie back into the relationship between the writer and the artist. I know we talked about how you guys became part of the project and that, but just as far as working together, Francois, did you give a few pages at a time to Michael, and then bounce things back and forth as the writing continued, or did you get a full script and then do all of the artwork? How did that process working back and forth together happen?
It's varied a little bit through the whole series, but basically I've either gotten an issue's worth of script at a time, or even sometimes an arc's worth of script at a time. And then I'll do the roughs for as much as I have. So like for the first couple issues, I was doing them an issue at a time. This last arc that I'm drawing right now, I had the whole arc in front of me, like all 4 scripts for the 4 issues. And so I laid out the whole thing, like the way that I imagined it would work on the page. And so that's me taking like all the ideas and all the because the guys write like a detailed script, but then sometimes I'll nudge it or push it in different directions because I'll think something will work differently on the page than it will. So I'll push it a little bit, and then I send them back all the roughs that I've done. So that'll be the whole issue or the whole arc in this case, and then they'll come back at me, and we'll either have a meeting or we'll have some emails back and forth. And then once I've got all that approved, then they're like, okay, you go for it. Then I I just go ahead and I draw as much as I go. So I just do the whole issue at a time, and basically that I work with our editor Amanda Meadows. So like that's on all the like tight little edits and things like that. Um, I think maybe because it's just such a big group of people. I think that like getting everyone together for like a tight meeting every like couple pages or something like that, it might have been a little bit it just might have added up to everything, especially since it's supposed to be a monthly book. So theoretically, I'm supposed to draw 22 pages every month. It kind of adds up. But yeah, and now I just do the whole thing, and then the guys get a big surprise, I think, at the end where like there's a whole issue ready to go for them to check out.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting working like with this is the first like monthly that I've worked on. I've either done like kind of one shots, anthologies, or graphic novels, which they all kind of work differently. But for a monthly, it's very much, and also like when it's a relationship where like I didn't know Francois when he got hired. I don't know him from anyone. So like when very early on, you get very much like granular with notes. You're like, oh, I don't like. Maybe we should shift his arm a little bit. Like you can get very much like kind of lost in the weeds. But as you build that relationship as time goes on, like literally, like I don't think I've even looked at like the roughs for the final arc.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like Francois got it. Like what? Like I don't need to like be like, yes, I agree. Yes, I think that's good. Yes. Like it's trust. Like we've built trust over the now couple years that we've been kind of working on this, and that's very different. I haven't had that with every artist. Like so, it's definitely interesting, and each relationship is kind of unique, and I like the way that there's a lot of kind of like set it and forget it. Like we write it, boom, Francois to figure everything else out.
It sounds like a great organic, like you said, kind of just happens naturally, right? And organically when, you meet a bunch of people, and sometimes, there is a little bit more collaboration needed or a little bit more hand-holding in certain areas. But when you find that comfort area, it sounds like that you two have found where you kind of, like you said, it's trust. It's just where I know this person, we're on the same page, or we're thinking similar, direction and all of that. And it's probably very comforting to release some of that kind of management of those details to another person in collaboration. Yeah. So with that, it sounds like you two do have a great working relationship as far as where you're going. So have you like talked about other like story arcs off of this? Kind of like what you were saying, there could be possibly another book or another story from this project.
We'd love to do more. We are not in a position where more is going to happen. This is a great book. Orcs in Space is a fantastic series. Like on the base level of like Three Stooges in Space, we're also doing a lot of great stuff with like personhood and like burgeoning sentience, and doing a lot of kind of deeper stuff, which isn't as bombastic to talk about, but is really a rich story. And so we really appreciate when people kind of clock that. But it came out in a very difficult time. We would love to do more. We had Abed and Rashad and I had a pitch for like we have some side characters, the fuzzballs that are introduced in the second arc. We had a whole like pitch ready to go for like a fuzzballs summer super special as like
Love
a
it.
one-off. As it's the more people need to discover this book and buy it in order for us to do more. That's like the bottom line. And that's the economics of comics. Like as much as we love doing this book, it costs money to make book. There's a paper shortage, So literally the last 4 issues are digital only. It'll come out in print as a collection, but as single issues, it's digital only, which is not great. Like this is me being very raw and honest about like the state. It's very disappointing because this is a great book. Like between, I not to be at my own butt, but it's hilarious. And I wrote some of those jokes. The art is beautiful. The colors are beautiful. Like it is a really great book. And I wish more people were able to
That's,
discover.
I think our goal, right, is definitely because I know just thank you again for allowing us to go through the book and to look at it and view it and read it. And it is a beautiful book. And that's what our hopes are with the show is that, hey, if we can help in any way, shape, or form, get it out there to a broader audience, no matter, if it's 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, let's do it, and that's why we're in this space where we're hopefully, again, sharing that, putting that good out there when people like yourselves are putting out just a quality, fantastic product, we need to get it in front of more people. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Mm. Yeah, that's why. Thank you for having us
Yes,
on.
thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming on.
And I mean, you really never know what the future holds for this title, for any, for anything. Like I always try and take the attitude that like we're very hashtag blessed to be able to do this for, like for our living or part of our living and everything like that. And it's been like just a super fun ride so far. The third book ends like kind of on like a conclusionary arc, but also a little micro bit of a cliffhanger. So I think that there are a lot of narrative hooks for the future, and you never know if it's going to come back in comic book format and other formats as well. Like obviously, like there's some like interesting people who are very involved in the world of animation, involved with the creation of this thing. You never know what kind of like second life that Orcs in Space is going to have. But then, of course, me and Michael and everybody right now, we're still in the home stretch of finishing up the last volume. So our eyes are very much on that also. So you think about the future, but you also think about the present and getting the book out and everything like that.
Sure, absolutely. And so I know I'm sorry, I'm kind of hogging questions. I just have so many questions for you guys.
Yeah, you sure
I know,
are,
I'm sorry. So for you two,
Pull his
huh?
mic.
So I know it was in talking to you and other creators, obviously the COVID era has been very challenging to get out there, whether it's local comic book shops or conventions or different things like that. It's kind of up to the challenge, right? To your point of getting it out there and getting in front of people. So now that things are starting to kind of loosen up a little bit, I mean, is that something where you're trying to do some more, even smaller conventions, or getting it out to some of the local shops?
Yeah, I have done. Convention-wise, I've only done Rose City Comic Con, which was this past fall, and that was my first convention back, and it went well. Rose City is a great convention in Portland. Did well on that. I did a free comic book day appearance, which was my first like store appearance, and I think since issue 1 came out. So
Wow.
and that was great. It was a lot of fun. Like the best part of this is like talking directly with fans,
Right.
either who have read the book and come to tell you how much they love it, or like you who are like, this sounds fun, I want to buy it, because it's fun when they buy books. So it's just starting to get in. So far, good experiences. I have another convention coming up next month, like local here in Pacific Northwest, SummerCon, which is going to be interesting because it's kind of an autographed con more, which those are always like, depending on your table placement, are either a nightmare or it's really good because someone's stuck in line waiting for George Takei and they're in front of your table for 30 minutes.
Right.
They might buy something, or they just have no interest because they're only there to see George Takei and then leave. So conventions are wild right now. I know a lot of people are having good experiences, but we're still, I think, in that honeymoon period of people are just excited to be back. Creators are just excited to be back. I think fans are fans, and they are always going to be focused on whatever they're focused on. But creators are very excited to be back, and that's a fun kind of place to be emotionally, I think, as creators.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just was gonna say exactly. Like there really has been like a lack of being able to do the events in person, because as much as it's a ton of fun, I love doing podcasts, I love doing online events. I've been doing them for this book and for my last book, both of which came out during the pandemic in one form or another. And then, but it's, when we started this whole project, we were like, okay, we're going to be at San Diego Comic-Con this year. It's going to be massive and huge and all this stuff. And we did a panel, a virtual panel at San Diego Comic-Con, but it had to be virtual because it was not, nothing was happening in person. So it was a huge change. But I'm really happy. Like, I think we've turned around the corner. I mean, we'll see. You never know what's going to come in the future. But I live in Montreal in Quebec, and, we just started to not be able to wear masks masks in public, right? Like 1 week ago. So so I'm going to be doing the Montreal Comic Arts Festival next weekend, which I've been pretty involved in setting up some of the programming for. I think that's going to be super fun to be back. I think that's going to be the real start for me of like back into the world. I think I'll be at Toronto Comic Arts Festival in a couple weeks after that as well.
That's awesome. Very cool. Sorry, Paul. Cut you off again.
I might as well just hang out.
Poor Paul.
Poor Paul.
No, cut him off.
Well, I just want, because I want to kind of piggyback onto that. Like so, as far as creators go, did you feel like you needed to pivot at that point because of the pandemic to become more innovative in your marketing and the way that you get out there, because you weren't able to have access to go to stores or conventions? And how did that process work to kind of modify? You said you were doing the podcasts, but like, getting out there and being more active on social media, like on Twitter or whatever. How did that look like to keep the momentum going for your book?
It was difficult because it's really hard to kind of get an idea of if things are working. Like sometimes you feel like you're just tweeting out into the void. So it's definitely kind of like trying to push more on social media. And I went a little old school. I had postcards made up and was mailing out postcards to stores.
Cool.
Nice.
With like the final order cutoff. No idea if it worked. I have one instance where I know it worked because I later visited the store and they were carrying it.
Awesome. That's cool.
And like, I'm gonna assume that my postcard worked. But like sometimes you just like you never know. But also like the cost of a postcard, it was worth $50 to me to mail out 100 postcards to different shops around the region. And if it was like a region like my hometown of Great Falls, Montana, that has 2 comic book stores, I would write a note saying like, hey, I'm from Great Falls, please help support me. So I have no idea if that ever paid off, but like that's just I went old school because you can do a lot of podcasts. Like I host a podcast and we talk about every month. But like it's so hard to actually know like what's reaching and what's working.
I love that old school touch. Those personal notes. They're saying right now everyone's so again social media electronic that they've talked about how people have actually forgotten or have never learned how to write a handwritten letter. I mean, it's crazy to think that, and you're like, oh my gosh, what you just said, Michael, with the postcard, I'm like, what a fantastic idea to set yourself apart, from everybody else, right? The ocean of stuff that's out there electronically, to do a postcard. That is a brilliant idea. I love that idea. Okay, Paul, I'm going to stop asking questions.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
okay.
Francois.
Francois, you had something to say.
It's okay. I actually have lunch, so I'll be back.
I feel bad for Paul. It's terrible. But I was just gonna say, I used to actually run a store, like a kind of a bookstore, and it was I remember one year. I got a call from somebody, and it was Dave Sim, like the creator of Cerebus. And like Dave, he's got some problems or whatever. But I thought it was fascinating. He was like, okay, I've got a new comic book coming out. It's in Diamond, and the cutoff is like next week. And I was like, Dave, do you call like every store? And he was like, yeah, I call every store. Wow. This is how I do it. I call all the stores. And I was like, okay, like I would have thought that like the creator of Cerebus could like take it easy or whatever, but I guess not, Wow. And I didn't call every store, but just like what Michael's talking about, I think I emailed like 150 different stores all around the United States and Canada. I'm also like obsessive. I don't like social media. I do Instagram just because I don't mind looking at pretty pictures and it's easy, but I don't do Facebook anymore. I've never done Twitter. It's like all of that. It drains my emotional energy and I find it a little exhausting. But I'm like very obsessive about all sorts of other press stuff. I really like getting into the newspaper. I like being on podcasts. I like getting interviewed. I like doing guest blogs and stuff like that. And so I'm always looking for that kind of stuff to do. And that's usually one of the things that I recommend to, people who are getting started in this business or in any creative business. It's that, you really have to tell people that you made something. Otherwise, it's very hard to know. We live in a sea of content, and it's like, and I don't even consider like comic books my competition, for the dollar of the consumer, right? You're also competing with like giant, like, with Netflix, with every bit of entertainment that you could possibly get. So, so number one, like, I try and have a lot of humility and be like, well, you never know what's going to happen. Just like Michael said, you can never know if each little thing that you're doing is going to help get the word out. But I do think that the agglomeration of all those things, the gestalt of all that, hopefully does get like a little bit of energy out there. Plus, finally, it's just fun to kind of connect with people. It's fun to connect with the fans, but it's also fun to connect with guys like you all who are doing, like promoting comics, who are interested in what the comics creators are doing. So that's, to me, it's always fun to connect with everybody.
I've got to share my calling a story. Because this is very funny. So this, not for Orcs, but several years ago with my first graphic novel series, Junior Braves of the Apocalypse, the marketing team at Oni was like, okay, here's your list of, like, every creator got a list of stores in their area to call, to be like, hey, volume 1's coming out, order it. So I had my list, and it was like, oh, I go to this store. Or actually, I have a pull box at this store. I'm like, and so I call and like, hey, I have a pull box there. I'm also a creator and I have a new graphic novel series coming out called Junior Braves. And the owner, and I know the owner because I know who the owner is. He just, can you just send me an email, man? I was like, okay, I'll just send you an email. That was the last phone call I made. I was like, that's like cold call. That's like a sales call. And I just immediately was like, oh, I feel really uncomfortable with that. And it's a great store. Francois knows the store. Shane, you might know Secret Headquarters. That's a great store. Okay. But just that one like phone experience, I get it. He had maybe gotten several calls that day from creators, or just like bad mood at that moment. But it was just can you just send me an email?
Oh man,
it's just like a punch in the gut.
Like, yeah,
okay.
You're like, I'm even a customer. I have a pull box. Come on.
But every day, everyone who runs one of these stores, they got a million things to do. They got to unwrap all those boxes. So it's both. Like we've all been on both sides of that sort of thing. There's that moment where you need to try and give it to an ask, and then there's the moment when someone asks you for something, and it's hard to balance those two things. And I agree. I don't do that's the same reason that I don't do calls. I find it like it's a little too exhausting. So I hustle those emails, man.
Nice.
All right, Paul.
Yeah.
Okay, Paul, your turn.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. You've been
bring
waiting
it, Paul.
So patiently, Paul.
This better be good.
All right, bring us home, Paul.
Yeah,
this better be a good one.
Here's what I would say. When I first looked at the book, the first thing it reminded me of was, and I don't know if you guys remember this book, quite a few years ago, about maybe 6 or 7 years ago, called I Hate Fairyland. Scotty Young.
Oh, Scotty Young, yep.
Yeah. It just, that sort of theme and sort of attitude you brought to it, kind of the slapstick, nature of it, I really dug it. That I got to give you a lot of credit. It's hard to sort of balance the creative and the humor and all that. And I listening to all the questions that the guys asked and the responses you guys had. I mean, it really explained, sort of the origin and where you kind of the journey you took to get there. So I got to give you credit. I think the publisher probably ought to promote it a little better for you. We look at the big two and we see sort of the moving comics, the moving panels to support and sort of promote. And I think they should do that with more of their books. It's probably not that difficult to do if you've already got a website and you've already got all these, all this infrastructure in place. They probably have a designer that could probably do that stuff. And, it's pretty low hanging fruit, for them. But I give you guys credit. The book the colors pop. The artist, Francois, you did a great job. Michael, the script had me cracking up. So, I hope you guys get to do more.
Us too, yeah. Thank you.
So more comments than questions, but Shane and Mike steamrolled me, so it's cool. I don't have like a little man syndrome or anything. I'm taller than both of them, I'm sure. But
Next time, buddy.
It's all good.
Sorry, Paul. We'll get you on the next one.
Typically we're the squares. Today we're the triangles, and I really got cut out. So actually, it's just like the parallelograms here.
Well, man, this was just fun, just getting a chance to meet both of you and hear your stories, and I absolutely love it. I hope that this helps in some way to bring some more people to the book. Like all of us have said, it's just super fun, and yeah, it's a shame when to hear how things aren't reaching an audience, and that's what our hope was from when we created this show, was that we can bring attention to the smaller publishers, the people that are out there working hard and putting out great stuff. So not everything has to be some person in a cape fighting crime. Sometimes you can just have some fun and just enjoy beautiful artwork and laugh a little bit. So I'm just so happy you guys have worked together to bring this to the world. It's fantastic stuff.
Great entertainment.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And I mean, there's a really important concept too out there that I think is pertinent, which is like the long tail, right? Like you put out something like a piece of like a product or a book, or in this case, even for you guys, you've got this podcast, and then it's just going to exist for years and years and years. So it's that long, maybe only like a couple people are going to listen to it over at any certain point. There's a peak right now, but that long tail, it diminishes for a very long time. And so like you guys with your podcast, people are going to be listening to this for years. You're going to have new people discovering it, and the same thing for this book and all the other books that we're going to do. Like they're out there, they exist, and so from years from now, someone's going to discover Orcs in Space just in the same way that I discover books from years and years in the past still today, and then you become a fan of something in the future. So once things go out there, they have a life of their own, they exist for a long time, and I think that's a good way to think about it also.
Yeah, I was going to say your mindset. It seems like talking to a lot of creators, and we've been blessed to actually have some international creators come on from Scotland and London and things like that, and even like Syria, Moscow, where things are not in a bubble. Things are very, very random out there, and to see how people just your mindset of overcoming some of these challenges, and you two have touched on that a lot during the pandemic, kind of pivoting and taking things into a different direction. And like you said, it's basically planting those seeds and see what comes to fruition at some point, and not giving up and keep pushing it. And Francois, you said perfectly, that long historical tale that's out there. And if it takes, I relate it to sometimes kind of the popular things that are happening right now in the sci-fi and comics industry. Characters have been out there for 30 years, and it has taken sometimes that long, maybe a little less, maybe a little longer, to actually reach that popularity. So again, sometimes planting those seeds, hopefully they come to fruition quickly, but in some cases it may take a little while. But I hope it does happen in all shapes and forms for you all. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. I've looked at some of your other creations that you have put out there, and that's what it's about. Just getting it in front of just a few more people, and hopefully we can spread it out to the masses. So, wonderful work.
So cool. Well, thanks again. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on, and we
Thank
appreciate
you again.
it.
Thank you guys.
Take care, guys.
Take it easy.
All right. Best of luck.
All right. Well, that was another fantastic episode. Please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so we can keep bringing you content like this. And we're always looking out for the little guy out there. We'll see you on the next one.